It was the Tarheeb Still show in Atlanta on Sunday as the Chargers defense showed up in a big way and rescued their offense that disappeared again in the second half.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, especially on the late night versions of the show where we're talking about a big win, an ugly win, but a big win by the Chargers. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, the Chargers escaped Atlanta with a win this time, and it's definitely thanks to Tarheeb Still and their defense having that big bounce back game.
It certainly was. The Chargers came out a little bit sluggish in this game on both sides of the ball, and then the defense started to really ratchet things up. They got their hands on a football, and it was like a party. Once you get one turnover, it turned into 2, 3, and then 4. They picked off Kirk Cousins 4 times in this game, and yes, this is Tarheeb Still's welcome to the NFL moment. The kid balled out and was instrumental to the Chargers picking up their 8th win of the season.
Which is huge, but at the same time, outside of Ladd McConkey, who was awesome, and we're going to talk about a lot of struggles in the second half by that Chargers offense. They disappeared once again, and Tarheeb Still was the only reason they scored it all in the second half. So there's a lot to get to, but great seeing Derwin James having that kind of vintage game again. But this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. David, it was about Tarheeb Still in this one, a guy that we have always loved, a guy that we were super high on, but to see him really have a game-changing type of performance, kind of, carrying the Chargers defense to a certain extent, right? Making the type of impact plays that he did, recording his 2nd and 3rd interceptions of the season. The turning point in this game for the Chargers, who won 17-13, was when the Falcons were driving up 10-9 late in the third quarter, and on a 4th and 5, Tarheeb Still jumped a Kirk Cousins pass and took it 61 yards back to the house for a pick 6. That was what led to the 8 points, the only 8 points the Chargers got in that second half. But it felt like the game was going a certain direction, and then Tarheeb Still kind of turned it on his head, and the Chargers won because of it.
Man, it was so fun to watch Tarheeb Still go out there and have that type of performance. And I remember watching film on him and being really excited about this guy and being really, enamored by his game. A guy that I felt like was a very strong tackler, a guy that had really good ball skills and had good ball production and showed it. He had 5 interceptions his last year in college. And, I thought that the way that he played the game was going to translate directly to the NFL level. And so far, it absolutely has, and that was the second of his 2 interceptions on the game. The other one, and all 4 of the Chargers interceptions in this game came, in the Chargers territory. So just, completely game-changing plays by Tarheeb Still. Obviously, the first pick, the pick 6, and also an equally important pass breakup as well, where he's able to dislodge the ball, I believe, out of Drake London's hands. And that was a massive pass breakup. So Tarheeb Still was
to give
everywhere.
Context for that one, late in the game, the part that doesn't get talked about enough from this game with Tarheeb Still, right?
Yeah.
The Falcons would have had a first down on their final drive at the 13-yard line with 45 seconds left if Tarheeb Still hadn't broken up that pass. Like, that was on the line in that moment. He comes up with that huge pass breakup there. Because, okay, if you give the Falcons 45 seconds from the 13-yard line to get a touchdown, they don't need any time to do that. Right. So that was a huge, huge play. But both of his picks obviously were great. I had the right bold prediction with the wrong player. I think Elijah Molden, 2 picks, 1 pick 6, first defensive scorer of the season. It's insane that the Chargers, Dave, were able to get this guy for a 5th-round pick. We've seen how good Cam Hart is, and now we're seeing Tarheeb Still, not even just in this game, right? I mean, he's already had a game-changing type of game against the Cleveland Browns, where not only got his first career interception, but also batted the ball back to Elijah Molden on a play that would have been a touchdown, accounted for 2 interceptions in that game. So to get a 5th-round pick and get a closer, get a guy that can change the game late, get a guy who can change the whole complexion of the game in the middle of the game, because once he gets it in his hands, he's always a guy that could take it back to the house. Like, that is such a huge pick by Joe Ortiz. He looks like he has a very bright future. So to get that with a 5th-round pick is nuts.
it's unbelievable to be able to sit here and always look for corners, because they're so important at every level of the draft, right? You're always looking to bring those guys in, trying to find guys that are gonna be able to come in and make an impact on your team, and to be able to find these type of players that have played this amount in such important games for the Chargers and have played at such a high level is an absolute feather in the cap to Joe Ortiz, that scouting staff, for bringing in Tarheeb Still, for bringing in Cam Hart. Both of these guys, given the injuries in the secondary, have been absolutely pivotal members to the Chargers season and why they are 8-4. Tarheeb Still was fantastic. 94 overall grade, 2 interceptions, that pick 6, and 3 passes defensed. Just a fantastic showing by him.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And I mean, for the Chargers to have kind of cleared up what the future looks like in that room, or at least a lot closer to it, with 2 guys you feel really good about as 5th round picks, I think really changes a lot. And I think it, with Tarheeb Still playing when he's playing like this, and he wasn't even supposed to be a starter, like, this dude was riding the bench for a lot of this season and only came in because of injury. So to have him step up and do this was crazy. And I think for the defense in general as a whole to come up with this game, to have a huge bounce back game after giving up 28.5 points on average the 2 games leading up to this. And you're right, it wasn't perfect. They were giving up some yards, but they kept coming through with those big plays. 4 interceptions off of Kirk Cousins is crazy. Like that. I mean, he hasn't been great this year, but he hadn't had a total disaster like that. And I mean, it felt like the Chargers defense was just getting to him and getting to him early, and he was rattled and made some really, really bad plays. But to have no interceptions and no turnovers in general in 3 straight games, and then to have the defensive performance they have today and get the Chargers a win, I thought was huge, David, because the Chargers needed the defense to go win this game. So as much as Justin Herbert's offensive kind of cast let him down a little bit on Sunday, he's not ever really had a defense that can go win him a game like this, and that's exactly what that defense did on Sunday.
Hey, man, it's a team effort, right? I mean, we're talking about offense, defense, and special teams. Sometimes one of those units isn't going to show up and perform up to the standard that they've set for themselves. So as a team, you need one of those other elements, one of those other pivotal pillars of your team to be able to step up and be able to say, hey, I got you. Get on my back. I'm going to carry you this time. That's what happened with the defense in this one. Not only did they come away with the pivotal stops, they're the ones that was able to score the touchdown in this game. So they prevented the points, and they put points on the board for the Chargers. It's extremely good news, and it's also very encouraging to see that the Chargers, after getting beat up defensively by the Baltimore Ravens and also looking like they were going to get beat up again on the ground, was able to make the necessary adjustments to limit the effectiveness of the running game of the Falcons and really get themselves back in the game, because it looked like they were, in for another I'm going to get ran all over performance like they did against Baltimore, but they made the necessary adjustments and they won the Chargers the game.
It just felt like they needed a game like this to kind of get that confidence back in themselves. So to see them have this performance, which wasn't perfect by any means, but getting those big plays when you needed it, going out and winning your team a football game. Yeah, they did catch a couple of lucky breaks. The Falcons missed a gimme field goal at the beginning of the game, and also later on, I mean, Kirk Cousins, a couple of just brutal interceptions, man. I mean, the lollipop he threw to Marcus May in the back of the end zone. I don't know. So they got some breaks, but they capitalized on all of them. Shout out to Marcus May Marcus May for getting that interception, having gotten signed this week, signed interception in the back of the end zone that took points off the board after the brutal fake punt attempt by the Chargers. Just a gigantic play from him. And I mean, I think the big thing was finally getting some stops on 4th down, but the Chargers had to be the most boom or bust 4th down team in the league, because they literally either give up 4th down conversions or they get an interception. That was all they did on Sunday. It was 6 for 6 going into it. In this game, they get 2 stops on 4th down, and both of them are picks, one being the pick 6 by Tarheeb Still, and the other one, the captain, Derwin James, making the big play in a big moment late, which was just awesome to see, and something we'll get more into later because he was awesome in this game. So it was a lot of the Chargers defense. But the offense we have to talk about. The great news is Ladd McConkey plays for this team, and as long as Ladd McConkey is playing, the Chargers are going to have a chance offensively. But as soon as he left, man, that offense disappeared. So we're going to talk about that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Hey, Locked On Chargers fans, I know you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fan in your life. Perhaps you've heard of the Ice Shaker. Ice Shaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift for whoever in your family loves sports. You can see David Drogemeyer with it right there. It really is a game changer. Former Charger Chris Gronkowski and his brothers are the ones that did it, created by the Gronkowski brothers. Ice Shakers have sold over 1 million bottles, and they've changed the game with the workout bottles. And this is the gift you've been looking for. Go to iceshaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. Kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like the plastic bottles do. Patented twist and agitator that breaks up powders but is silent when you shake it instead of the annoying ball, and will hold ice for 30 plus hours. The agitator also works as a drink strainer, so it's great at tailgates to mix drinks. Order your team branded bottles today at iceshaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. Ice Shakers, show your support for your team with the best branded workout bottles on the market. Ice Shakers. I also need to tell you guys that this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy during the winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with family is the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. And the season can mess with me a little bit, especially in the wintertime. My therapist actually told me, go see a movie, because that's the best way that I unplug. But if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try, because it's entirely online and designed to be convenient and flexible to your schedule. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. David, there's a lot to get into with the Chargers offense, and I know we were not happy with the performance overall, but there is one guy that we can at least kind of cleanse our palate with, or at least kind of procrastinate on getting to the bad stuff to talk about Ladd McConkey, man, because what was the show on Friday, right? The whole thing was about, hey, the offense has to run through baby. Ladd McConkey now. He's easily their best offensive skill position player. He was even before J.K. Dobbins, but without J.K. Dobbins, it was even more clear. And going into this game, his career high in targets was 9. The Chargers fed him 12 in this game, but it also came with a cost. But I think you have to start with Ladd McConkey, David. 9 catches for 117 yards in this game, his third 100-yard game of the season, and the third Chargers rookie wide receiver to get 800-plus yards. He has been phenomenal. He was asked to do more in this game, and when he was on the field, he absolutely delivered it.
Hey, we said feed Ladd until they can prove they can stop him. Well, guess what? They didn't prove they could stop him at all the entire game. Ladd McConkey was like 7-Eleven because he was always open. Every single play, he was open. They could have threw him the ball every single time, and they pretty much did in the first half. 105 of those 117 yards came in the first half from the Chargers. And he was everywhere, and it was big plays too. Even a 47-yard play where he was weaving in and out of the defense. Unfortunately, he did fumble on that one, but Darius Davis was Johnny on the spot, and he was able to recover that fumble, fortunately for the Chargers. But yeah, Ladd McConkey everywhere. It's just an unbelievable weapon, man. A guy that just creates such good separation, a guy that has reliable hands, and he was the entire offense in this game. Like, he was a one-man wrecking crew.
And it came with a cost, right? And that's the problem. And that's the one thing we've questioned is, can he shoulder that load? Obviously, the Chargers should go to him and continue going to him over and over again. But he had a shoulder injury coming into the game. And I think he left the game with a knee injury at some point. Was moving around, seemingly okay, seemed in good spirits, but said it would basically be tomorrow when we'll find out exactly what the extent of everything is. But he is so important to this offense. Any missed time by Ladd McConkey feels like it totally kills any chances you have of having a good offensive day, and his ability to be out there has been great. But in this game, it felt like every time he was pulling himself off the grass, he was just feeling it and just getting beat up over and over again.
You could see it all over his face.
Even the plays when he wasn't getting hit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He actually did a pretty good job in this game limiting the big hits, and then the 2 times he did get hit big, he got hit in the helmet, and neither one of the times was called. And of course,
disgusting.
in back-to-back weeks, another huge critical penalty flag gets picked up against the Chargers. Because who knows?
How do we not have replay assists for these type of plays? It's so obvious it was helmet to helmet, and it's a play that changes the trajectory of the game in that moment. It's just disgusting. Totally. How do you talk about player safety and not have systems in place to protect your players like that?
Yeah, well, it's just, of course, when you're covering the team that has Derwin James on it, and you've seen the kind of the ridiculous ways they've gone out of their way to punish him and make an example out of him. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it wouldn't even be close. But David, I mean, Ladd McConkey, unfortunately, was the entire offense, for better or for worse, right? He was the offense, but like what that also means is nobody else offensively really stepped up. And once again, we saw an abysmal second half performance by this team. And really, you could probably span it out for the whole game. Like, that just was not a good, offensive performance through and through. But in the second half especially, right, they would have scored 0 points in the second half had the defense not gotten a pick six, which let them have a hugely important 2-point conversion, which Jim Harbaugh would not stop talking about. It was awesome. It was a laser beam, Justin Herbert to Josh Palmer, the only real positive play for the Chargers offense in an entire half of football, which is pretty embarrassing. But it was a great play. But only 43 net yards in the second half, only 187 yards in this game overall, which is the least the Chargers have had in a win since 2007. It's great that your defense can win you this game. This, to me, was an inexcusable performance by this Chargers offense, especially in the second half. They had 4 drives in the second half before the kneel downs, and they had 2 first downs. It's just simply not good enough. It was really, really hard to watch, and it's hard to write it off, David, as an off day because it's happened before.
It's happened multiple times before, so it's not an anomaly. It's a pattern, right? Like unfortunately, it's a pattern offensively, and obviously with J.K. Dobbins being out, that puts even more pressure on the supporting cast to be able to step up and elevate their game to be able to compensate for his absence. And unfortunately, they were not able to do that in this game. Gus Edwards had 6 carries for 32 yards. Hey, good average, 5 yards a carry, a little bit over 5 yards a carry there. Pass catchers, it was Quentin Johnston who had 2 catches on 4 targets for 12 yards, and Josh Palmer with 1 catch for 11 yards. That was it. That was pretty much it. Everything else was too insignificant to even mention. So the second half, it was 3 punts, 1 turnover on downs, and they ran 15 total plays in the second half. Not including the 2 kneel downs. 15 total plays of offense in the second half of this game. It's really, really hard to win football games when you're not able to sustain drives and you have these, 3 and outs, 4 plays and out, and you can't stay on the football field. The supporting cast has to elevate their game in these games going forward, or else the Chargers are going to be in bad, bad shape.
The funny thing about, the 15 plays in the second half is actually even less than that, because if you take out the special teams, right, and also take out a fake punt, it's even worse, which is crazy to say, right? I mean, 15 rushing yards in the second half as well, but like the craziest part about it, the fake punt, which didn't actually gain the distance it needed to, was still one of the more positive offensive plays the Chargers had in the entire second half of this game. It just can't happen like this. And like, you're right, it does come down to the supporting cast. And I think once again, you look at this offense and you wonder where to kind of put the blame, or if it's just a general lack of firepower that this team has, because the Chargers didn't get enough out of any of the position groups they had today. The running game was actually okay, but it was super boom or bust. 10 carries, 52 yards by the Chargers running backs. 5.2 average is great, not including the 1 for 0 yards and a fumble by Hassan Haskins, which was absolutely useless. But you missed J.K. Dobbins, but the backs weren't really the problem, right? It's hard to put it just on them. It's not. The Chargers didn't stay on the field long enough to get any sort of running game going in the second half, and it just got totally abandoned. And Ladd McConkey had 117 yards. The rest of the skill position players on the Chargers combined, rushing yards, receiving yards, had 88 yards.
Yeah.
And Ladd McConkey had 117. Ladd McConkey had to leave this game. Like, you're a Ladd McConkey injury away from this being like a total disaster. And it's hard for me to even just blame the offensive line, because the offensive line should not have struggled as much as it did against maybe the worst pass rush in the league. And in big moments, they were finding ways to get pressure, even if that wasn't where all the sacks came from. But there were several coverage sacks straight up. Like, there was times where Justin Herbert had to hold on to the football too much. I would like to see him check it down a couple times. That wasn't the difference in this game. But the problem is these receivers not named Ladd McConkey are totally struggling to separate, like almost borderline unusable. Another non-impactful game from Quentin Johnston. Josh Palmer has the 2-point conversion and nothing else. It's just not enough, David. And I think when you lose Ladd McConkey, it shows you even more just how kind of lacking in the talent department that this offense is at times.
And then DJ Chark is on the field for 2 snaps in this game. Like, make it make sense to me. I just don't understand how you can see how anemic the offense has been, in honestly in most games this season, and especially in the second half, and not try to give him a couple of opportunities. What do you have to lose? Like, literally at this point, what has anyone else showed you that would prevent you from drawing up a couple plays just to see if it works? I don't understand it at this point in time.
It doesn't, especially because they're still giving those chances, or at least did in this game, to Quentin Johnson, where they just throw it up to him. And man, like, yes, I maybe you would have caught it if the ball would have fallen perfectly into your hands, but the defender's not even looking, man. Like, he's right on top of you. If you go back to the football, if you play through the defensive back, you're getting a flag there, and you have the ball in the 1 yard line on 1st and goal, and that's on one of the field goal drives. Like, that's the difference in these games. And with Quentin Johnson, you want to believe that he can keep going, but like, what else can you do besides give him a drag route or give him an easy catch and run? Like, what else can you trust him with right now? Because I don't know what that is. So for other guys like a DJ Chark not to get any chances, if that's just an indictment of the offensive skill position group, you have to trust the coaching. The coaching's gotten you an 8-4 record, but something has to change offensively because it was just too poor. And that Falcons offense gives up about 350 yards per game, and you barely put up 185. You had less than 200 yards in this game, which is sad. But one of the things that wasn't sad was seeing a vintage Derwin James performance, because it wasn't just the game-stealing interception. It was the entire game, one of the best games we've seen from him in a long time. And also, even though it's an ugly win, it's still a huge win as far as the Chargers' playoff chances and them keeping track with what they need to do the rest of the season, because the magic number might be 2 now that the Chargers need to win to get in. But talking about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First of all, I need to tell you guys to get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The lines for next weekend's game are out. Sunday Night Football. The Chargers are opening up as 3.5-point underdogs next week against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. The Chiefs looked terrible the last 2 weeks against the Panthers and the Raiders, and unfortunately, the Chargers didn't have a convincing enough game, I think, in this one to really have to change that. The Chargers will have a chance, but they'll have to play a lot better. And if you guys want to get action on that game on Sunday Night Football prime time, just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I also need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time, if you want to get tickets to one of the last 2 Chargers home games of the season, you absolutely have to be getting your tickets with Game Time, because Game Time has Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And they also have all-in pricing, which I absolutely love. Toggle all-in pricing. The price that you see is the price that you're going to get. And there are only 2 more home games. If you want to get part of the newfound home field advantage the Chargers have all of a sudden, you can still get into the next game against the Buccaneers on my birthday, December 15th, for only $51 on Game Time Picks with that all-in pricing. That is a great deal, and I would definitely, if I could, be trying to get to as many of the games left as the Chargers have, because it looks like a lot of fun at SoFi these days. And if you guys want to get in on that action, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. David, it's time to get into some more silver linings, I think, from this game, including Derwin James, man, turning back the clock a little bit in this one and really having that game-changing type of performance, and just kind of thinking about what that can mean for this defense. Tony Jefferson gets a huge shout-out as well. A lot of guys that are unsung heroes in this game. But thank you guys for making us your first listen, especially on the late-night post-game edition of the show. If you need a second listen, check out the new slate at Locked On NFL, where they have 2 shows a day with Tyler the Madman rolling in the morning, and my boy Tony Wiggins later on, bringing on the people who cover their teams every single day on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. David, let's get into Derwin James, because that is someone we had to give his own space for this show, because he was awesome in this game. It wasn't just the game-sealing interception. He was throughout the game making huge impact plays.
Yes, he was. Derwin James was all over the football field, and we got to see him at his absolute best. And when Derwin James is flying downhill and up in the box and just shooting the gap, letting his instincts take over, nobody gets downhill like Derwin James. I don't care who you talk to. Nobody gets downhill and attacks attacks his prey like the predator that is Derwin James. And this was one of those type of games, 10 tackles, 2 tackles for loss on some critical plays where he was able to come around the corner and showcase that ability to get the ball carrier on the ground. And of course, the fantastic game-sealing interception. It's been a while since Derwin James has got his hands on a football. So to see him be able to get this one and it be the game-sealing pick is great news. It's fantastic for him. I think it's great for the defense, and I think it's also good for the team to see that one of the vocal leaders on this team is not only talking the talk, but he's going out there and walking the walk too.
Well, and just, I mean, we've seen a lesser version of Derwin James, and I think after the suspension, you could have, potentially seen that come back a little bit, a more mild-mannered guy, but in this game, you did not see that by any means, and his 2 tackles for loss, both of them were on 3rd and short, both of them brought up 4th downs. I thought that was really awesome. One of them got the Falcons to punt, and the other one ended up being a 4th down conversion that they tried to attempt. But the first interception, to your point, since week 8 of last season. And I think the impressive thing about the interception was he just knew exactly where the ball was going to go. He was sitting there waiting for it the whole time, totally baited him into it. And then once the ball came, he made it count. But I think Tony Jefferson needs to shout out too if we're shouting out safeties in this game, because after physically getting bullied last week, Tony Jefferson came out and really set the tone. It was a couple bad drives by the Chargers defense, but there was a play where he absolutely just blew up a wide receiver on a little screen play, blew him up, made the tackle through it. And I was like, oh my God, like that's just not a level of physicality we saw last week. Like Tony Jefferson has barely played at all this year. And he comes in, immediately clicks into the defense, is making huge plays on the very first drive of the game.
Yeah, it makes you ask the question, why? Why is this the first time that Tony Jefferson is seeing the football field? Because, man, he looked fantastic, especially on that first drive. Like you said, that, talking about setting the tone, he had at least 3 tackles on that first defensive drive for the Chargers. And it, he always has, pretty good form tackles, good physical hits. And yes, that play where he was able to fight through that block on that wide receiver screen and make the tackle was one of those statement type of plays. And I love the fact that Jim Harbaugh said after the game in the press conference that, hey, like this guy's been giving us fits all year long. He's been jumping routes and making life a living hell for us on the scout team. So, this was not a surprise for me to see him go out there and have the type of game and have the type of performance that he did. But it was still great to see. I mean, he is a guy that's been up and down and bounced back and forth like a pinball in the pinball machine. But for him to get his opportunity to be ready and go out there and answer the call and look like he fit in like he never left, I think is definitely credit to Tony Jefferson for being ready. He looked fantastic out there.
Yeah, man, this dude took a whole year off football. Like the chances of being able to come back and even make the team were slim. To have him come back and have a game like this where you lose a Louis Gilman, a guy who plays a ton of snaps for you, and you just don't skip a beat at all. And I think to have him making that play is a practice squad guy. To have Troy Dime out there making plays is a guy who was never a starter on this team and is having to step up. To have Tarheeb Still making the plays he's making as a backup, next man up, okay, this is what that truly means, to see these guys in these big moments making these plays. And I do think that we have to shout out Cameron Dicker, right? Do not take Cameron Dicker for granted. In a year where kickers everywhere have really struggled, Cameron Dicker's still been awesome. 3 for 3 on field goals today. Any one of those misses, if he misses a single field goal today, the Falcons are driving for the game-winning field goal at the end there, and they got into field goal range, right? It's so important to have a kicker, and I'm just never going to forget the many years of terrible kickers the Chargers had before they randomly called, Cameron Dicker at a country concert to come be their kicker.
Hallelujah for Cameron Dicker, man. It's such a great feeling knowing that when you trot him out there and line him up for a 50-plus yard field goal, that he's going to go hit it. This guy's got ice water in his veins. He does not care. He's not intimidated by the moment. He goes up there, he knocks it through, he does his job, and you absolutely can't take that for granted, because the carousel of kickers that the Chargers entertained before signing him to the contract they signed him to was a laundry list of throwaway kickers around the block. So it's nice to have Dicker the kicker.
And there's a ton of like really bad Chargers kickers that have gone on to be great. Young Wei Koo missed a gimme in this game, has mostly been great, right? Chase McLaughlin's out here making field goals. Dustin Hopkins up until this year have been playing really well for the Browns. But the Chargers, I mean, we're talking Nick Roses and Roberto Aguayos and Caleb Sturgis's. Ty Long kicking field goals. Michael Badgley isn't really as good as we thought he could be. I mean, it was so much for so long. But I do want to just end the show by saying, hey, obviously this is an ugly win. I think the hard thing to swallow from a win like this is that the good teams are going to beat you if you have only one good side of the football, and to see one side of the team play so poorly in this game. It sucks, and it's hard to watch, and you hope that they can improve on it, but like at the same time, a win is a win in the sense of the Chargers are 8-4 now, and this was a huge win as far as what their playoff chances are. They move back into the 5th seed with the Ravens losing this weekend. I don't know how the Ravens ever lose, but now they have 5 losses. Now, you likely move the magic number to 2 for this team to get into the playoffs, right? They probably need to win 2 more games out of their next 5 for them to get in. Bengals and Dolphins with their losses likely out of it. Keep that separation between you and the Colts. You've got to win, and you can gain another game of separation on Monday night if the Broncos go lose. But the Broncos and the Colts even still have to play each other. So even if one of these teams makes a run, the Chargers have really set themselves up to where, hey, they aren't firing on all cylinders on their entire team right now, but they've built up kind of a lot of wiggle room for themselves down the stretch.
Hey, short week, cross-country flight. Early game against a plus 500 opponent coming off of a bye week, right? Often the offense didn't score a single touchdown yet. They found a way to get a big time win. The defense was what it was. It was able to pick up the offense, and sometimes that's what you need. To have have them be able to go out there and bear the weight of the gravity of going out there and winning a football game for you, and they did that. And
just like the offense did against the Bengals, right? When the defense gave up their entire lead that they had built up, right? Like so it is a give and pull, push and pull at least.
Absolutely, and so the Chargers did what they needed to do, picked up a massive win. Now they're 8-4, and now only got to pick up a couple more wins going into the biggest rivalry game they got left on the schedule in prime time against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead.
It's going to be a big one, and it's going to be another chance, for Jim Harbaugh to get that signature win in his first season. And I think for this team, with the amount of overhaul they had, I mean, starting 12-plus new starters going into the season when you're $60 million over the cap to start with, was always going to be a huge overtaking. And there are some struggles for this team offensively, especially, I think Joe Ortiz did what he can, but there's not enough on that side of the ball right now. Greg Roman takes some blame as well. There's a lot of people you could blame, but at the same time, in first year of Jim Harbaugh, to be able to make the playoffs, be able to win a playoff game, all those things are still in the cards. And I think that's what the expectation is for this team now, is making the playoffs, winning games in the playoffs. And I think it's tough because you're like, hey, this is not a team that's going to win a playoff game playing like this. But what they've done is given themselves time to figure it out on the fly and hopefully continue to keep building and getting better. They might flame out at the end because they don't have enough, but they're going to give themselves a chance to get into the dance and see what happens. And I think in year 1 of Jim Harbaugh, that's a pretty cool thing. So we are going to be getting into our biggest Chargers storylines and overreactions tomorrow. So make sure you guys hit us up on Buy or Sell Tuesday at Locked On LAC on Twitter to get your buy or sells in, or hit us up on the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 to get your 30-second Chargers buy or sell in there. Thank you guys, as always, especially after big wins like this. It's so cool to be able to hang out with you guys and talk about it and vent the frustrations and also talk about all the great stuff as well. To make sure you guys never miss the show, you guys can also listen or listen and follow the show for free on our Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and find the show wherever you get your podcast from, and on our social media at Locked On and Chargers on Instagram, on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, and me and David post a show to both of our accounts every single day as well. But 8-4. A lot to improve on, but I think a lot to be excited about as well. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Buy or Sell Tuesday. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.